Yo, 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 yo. I'm a little early for a change. How about that? You got my just rolled off the bus look. That's what it's going to be today. I've got a hotel room here today in lovely Spokane, Washington, but I can't get into it until because the hotel was full last night. It's always the adventures of the road. If you get a hotel, it's like, are we going to be able to get in early before 3 p.m.? And last night they were sold out because it's a Saturday night, of course, in downtown Spokane, Washington. So I'm not getting in till probably, I bet, 2. So I thought, forget it. We'll just go to the venue, dressing room, get a coffee down the street. This is really good. Oat milk latte situation with 3 shots so that I get really, really, really jittery. I saw a coffee shop yesterday in Idaho. I think it was called like Jitters by Jane or something. I thought that's pretty good. I was in Boise yesterday. We had a good gig yesterday. Boise, Idaho, the Knitting Factory. We're playing the Knitting Factory tonight in lovely Spokane. Knitting Factory used to be one in LA. I don't think there is anymore. It was in Hollywood, but kind of a chain of venues, sort of like House of Blues. Maybe not quite as, a little more down and dirty. Not as fancy as the House of Blues, but similar. Similar size, similar vibe. Big clubs, basically. And that's what we're doing tonight in Spokane, Washington. Last show of the tour. Who we got here? We got Eston. We got Peter. We got Paul. Peter, Paul, and Mary. We got Mark. We got Braxel. What's happening? Dan Huff videos are great. If you've not seen them, check them out. I haven't seen those yet. I heard he was doing some video stuff. Gotta check it out. Hi all. Has Pete made his tone XIR yet? Did I release anything for Tone X? I don't even remember if I did like a year or 2 ago. I did a video for the Alex Lifeson Tone X a while ago, but I don't think I haven't done my own and released them yet. I get mixed up sometimes. I can't remember, especially after night on the bus rolling around. It's like, did I do that? I don't know. I've done a few releases for the Quad Cortex, but I wanted to, my intention is eventually to do something official with Tone X because it's a good format. It's awesome. What else we got here? Let's see. Chris Quinn is here. Victor. Yeah. Let's see. Have you seen Rick Beato's rant about copyright strikes from Universal? I have, yeah. It seems to be a big problem, and I'm on Rick's side. I mean, it's like fair use and all that. There's supposed to be laws that dictate that if you're teaching, you can, I don't really understand the ins and outs, but regardless of all that, it's just asinine that, UMG, it's like, come on, like, they are getting nothing but benefit out of Rick's shining a spotlight on artists and songs and making people interested in songs they might not have even been aware of, and nobody's watching Rick Beato's program to listen to or steal the music, like they're watching it for, that's why education's fair use. It's like using it in a different context to like, so Universal's not missing out on anything. I don't see why they would. There should be a, just they should leave them alone. There should be an exception made for this type of, and they're supposed to be legally, right? Fair use. That's what it's supposed to be. So I'm on Rick's side, and of course it'd be a travesty and a shame, if they were to screw up his channel and for YouTube and just kind of the powers that be in the suits of people who don't really care about music and give 2 hoots about they just care about money, and some algorithm dictating that he's getting in trouble and stuff. It's all terrible, silly. But I don't know. We'll see what happens. We'll see how it shakes down. But I really like Rick. He's an asset. His videos are terrific. I'm a fan. He's a great YouTuber. He's a good cat too. So he's a nice guy, and I hope that this all is resolved in a satisfactory way, and that UMG realizes that they're you know, it's like the whole music business these days is just such a mess, sort of with, you know, the, be it, you know, Ticketmaster or what's left of the labels just fighting for whatever they can, and it's just a weird world. But you know, anyway, you gave me your pick at Such Vi in New York. Your tone was killer. I think I remember that moment. Thanks. Yeah, I was really happy with the way that the tone worked out and the amps and everything, how it was all sounding on tour. Super stoked. And I was talking to Sir yesterday on the phone, to John Sir, and mentioning how great the amps were. Knock on wood, but I had no problems. I don't want to have any problems in the future. That's why I'm knocking on wood. No issues with you know, anything tonally. And yeah, like my rig just worked great. I'm seeing that I got kind of low Wi-Fi strength, which is weird. These Knitting Factory venues don't seem to have very good Wi-Fi. Yesterday it was very slow, so if it's crapping out, let me know. I'm gonna go down to the bottom of the chat here and just make sure. It seems like nobody's complaining about the stream dropping out or anything, so hopefully it won't. And I think it's just it's probably buffering and working okay, but let me know if there's any issues. So stream works fine. Great. That's good. Yeah, I'm just getting a low. Great. She always calls during the live stream, doesn't she? I'll say hi for a minute. And I'm just doing my live stream right now.
Oh, okay. Call me back.
Okay. Wait. Right. Yeah, it's funny. She tends to. Do you guys have this, like, you know, people in your lives that always call, like when you're, you know what I mean? Right when you go live, it'll be like, oh, there they are. Of course, they'll call you all morning. I mean, I like it. I'm not complaining. Anyways, running your PT 100. Not out here right now. Those glasses would probably stop a bullet. Thanks a lot. You know what? I'll tell you just really quick about these glasses, and then I'll tell you about the rig and PT 100 and when I was using it and stuff. These glasses are actually the first time I've ever been able to get a. They might look thick to you guys, but they are. I'm not kidding. Substantially thinner than anything I've ever had in my life. And you know, they distort my eyes way less than what I've had up until this pair. I'm talking 50, you know, whatever. I'm 53. It's like 52 years of wearing glasses. It's just like what, like I wouldn't have worn my last ones on this live stream because I'd be embarrassed about the thickness of it. It just they looked ridiculous. I would never wear them in public. I actually feel okay about these for a change, for having a pair of glasses that isn't insane. Like the thickness of my old glasses, I'm not kidding, were that thick. The lenses on the, you know, they're kind of concave and they come out on the sides. That's how bad my eyes are, right? I'm very, very, very blind. I'm a negative 10.5 in my left eye, which is my good one. And I'm and I'm a negative about 14 or something, or 15 in the right, which is just kind of useless. With my eyes corrected, I see about 20/25 out of my left eye, and I see about 20/60 out of the right one, which is lazy and sucks. But anyways, when I ordered these glasses, they came in, and I saw them when they showed up, and I was like, oh my God, they're so much thinner than anything I've ever had in my life. It's amazing. They're like, yeah, they've made some good advancements in the last few years, and they can get, you know, more power into a thinner lens. So I'm actually really happy. So anyway, pick on me all you want about the lenses, but these are the first ones where I've actually felt like, okay, you know, what happened this morning, and then I'll get on to talking about the gear. I use this contact solution that's like a I don't know if you guys wear contacts or not, but I use it's like a hydrogen peroxide, you know, and you got to put your lenses in it for 6 hours, and they neutralize the solution neutralizes it, you know, is disinfects the lens, but then it neutralizes in 5 or 6 hours, so that you can then become saline solution. You stick the contact in your eye then without it burning like crazy. Well, my contact case in my backpack last night flipped over. All the fluid drained out, and when that happens, nothing gets neutralized. And I tried to put in my lenses this morning before the show, just in case that had happened sometime during the night. I don't really, blah blah blah. and I burned the hell out of my left eye. And I was like, okay, so now whenever that happens, I got to put them in there for another 5 hours. So I won't be able to put my contacts in until like 5 p.m. today. Hence the glasses. Deal with it. All right, so PT100 I'm not using on this tour. I put out 2 videos this week about what I am using though, and one of them has a lot of views. It's like up over 70,000. I think it's 75 now or something. And kind of funny because it's like some people were like boring, like my rig, kind of controversial, like the why are you using all this rented stuff? And that's for this tour I'm on right now, which is like the polar opposite of the Satch Vi tour where I had 2 PT100s, 2 412s, 5 of my guitars out, my 2 pedal boards, the whole 9 yards, right? On this tour, I'm completely the opposite. I've brought 1 guitar, quad Cortex, renting orange pedal babies, and a rented Marshall cabinet. It's just that's my life these days. It's jumping from one thing to the next, it seems, and using different stuff and having gear all over the place and things coming and going. And it's interesting. You just pivot, just like I did when I had my contacts screw up this morning. I pivoted to my glasses. You pivot. That's what you do. Eston says, hello, Pete, and all the good folks here. What's up, folks? Hope that didn't sound me. It's all right. I'm getting it my whole life. Sean's got some serious farsighted stuff going on. 3.75 or 4.0 reading glass. So you're farsighted. There's going to be a drop, I hear. There was in the news this week for those out there that are age-related, reading, doing this as you get above 40. There's going to be a drop, I hear, within a year that you'll be able to put in. It'll work for 24 hours and help your reading. It'll, because what ends up happening is the muscles don't work the same anymore, and they won't adjust for, I think when you're reading up close, your muscles, they can do a thing where they can contract and when you're younger, and then you just sort of lose that ability as you get older. So maybe it stimulates the muscle or something like that in your eye so that it can work properly again. You can read close up and see far away. Anyway. Oh, interesting stuff. All right. What else we got here? Regarding the boring rig run through, thoughts on a single 412 versus 2 separate. I never like it as much, like the single 412 as opposed to 2 cabs, but they're just readily available, and they sound, a 412 itself sounds good. It's got the thump of a 412 and stuff, but you don't really get the stereo out of it. And it's kind of narrow. And I much prefer to use 2 cabinets spaced out on this gig so that I can get I'll take 2 112s and put them a few feet apart so I get a bit of stereo image behind me. With a 412 you really don't hear the stereo, but you hear it a little bit, but and it's always beamier, and you move a little bit out over to the left and now you can't hear your cab as well and stuff. But I just get used to it. I angle it ever so slightly, about 10 or 15% towards the center of the stage, not too much, but a little bit, so that I can walk from my place, stage right, and go a little bit towards the center and walk up and play a solo and stuff like that. And I can still hear the cabinet behind me decently. Yeah. That's that story. Are you splitting the 412 in your recent rundown video? Did I understand that right? Yeah. So I just rent the Marshall 1960 AV is the one I'll usually get. So I'll get a top style cab, a slant cab, so I can hear it if it's behind me a little easier. And I'll do the stereo split thing on the back. So Marshall cabs, they've got 2 jacks on the back, and you can either plug into one and get mono, or you can plug into the 2 jacks and it'll split the sides as though it was like 2 212s or whatever. So that's what I do so that I can get a little stereo. Yeah. Yep. That's right. Works good. I'd actually like to do that on my Sir cabinets, if there was a way we could come up with there's not very many people buying 412s these days, but for those that did, I'd love to have that. I think the stereo option is nice, just for certain rigs and stuff. So I'd love to have that. We don't have that currently on my PT100 Sir cabs. It would be nice to have the 2 jacks. Yeah. Arthur says, I definitely have the age-related reading problems. I mean, everybody does. It's just, I think I don't think there's that many people that that get above 40 and can read as well as they could without some reading glasses. So I think it's a standard human condition kind of thing. I'm all the way at the bottom of the chat for a change. I'm never doing that. Love with if you could compare the blue guitar Fat Cab with a 412 and see how close it gets tone wise. Thomas engineered a 112 to be as close as he can get. That's interesting. If you'd like to send me one, I could give it a go. A 112. And it's just physics. They never quite do the thing. Beefy Cab is the PT 212 that we designed. That's kind of deep. It's not as big as a Bogner oversized, which is, you might as well have a 412 if you're using the Bogner oversized 212. It's so big. But it's got a pretty beefy sound for being a 212. 212 with two creamback H's in it. Great tenant cabinet that we did for the initial PT 100 212 cabinet. Yeah. Thanks to you, I use a stereo rig parallelized for the stereo pedals, a 212 for the dry center, and two 112s for the stereo image. Yeah, 212 for the dry center, two 112s for the stereo. Yeah, it's a fun rig, right? Great fun. There's Simon. What's up, man? Just caught a YouTube video from 2013 with you and Steve Stevens playing a show at NAMM. Some great playing from both of you. Thanks, man. A long time ago now, right? 12 years ago already. It's crazy. We did a couple of those gigs where we did some fun tunes that Steve picked, some King Crimson and some. I think we did some Aerosmith at one of them. Day of the Eagle. That was fun. I love Steve. I love playing with him. He's such a great cat. And I think Randy Cook did one of them with us, who's the drummer out here with us now, Five for Fighting. And I think Eric Aldanius did another one, who's Billy Idol's drummer now for quite some time now. So, yeah. Well, thanks, Simon. Good to see you. I'll see you in January, man. Thanks for the super chat. I appreciate that. I want to plug a Soldano SP77 into the return of a Runt 50. How can I switch between the two on the fly? You need a switcher to do that. You can use various loop switchers. I mean, anything from the good old, the GCX ground control sort of old loop switchers would do that. So I think what you're asking is you want to switch between the two heads, or sorry, is it the preamp, like the preamp of the Runt 50, or alternatively use the Soldano. So you could use there's various things from RJM that you could use. Just a loop switcher is what you need, because what you need to do is put basically the preamp and also the SP77 and also the preamp of the Runt both need to be in a loop of a loop switcher. And then you either turn on the one or the other, and you can switch it via MIDI and stuff like that. How can I switch between the two on the fly? And could I use pedals in the loop as well? It depends. It depends on the effects loop and where it is in the Runt 50. Because if the effects loop was coming post preamp, and then you were to, it's possible that the Soldano switching into the, like if you turned on the Soldano and then went into the return, maybe the effects loop comes after. Probably not, though. I bet the return of the Runt is sort of the loop return too. But you've got to ask Dave Friedman. This is a Friedman question. Definitely you can do it. The switching, whether or not you'll be able to use the same effects, questionable. There's different ways to do this, though, that you could probably figure it out. You can definitely use pedals in the, like, wait a minute. Let me think about this for a minute. So if you had the loop, I think if you've got just other things down chain in the switcher, so say you got like an RJM switcher or something like that, an 8-loop switcher, and you were to put the preamp of the Runt and the SP77 both in a loop of the switcher, and then you put other effects further on down the chain, they'll come after. So you should be able to do that and then go into the return of the runt and everything should work. So yeah, that should be fine. But I think you should be able to use, you're saying pedals. You'd put them in down chain from the preamps. You could even have other effects in the, if you had an 8-loop switcher, you could put a compressor and an overdrive and a fuzz or something in loops 1, 2, and 3. And then you could have the two different preamps in, say, loop 4 and loop 5 of an 8-loop switcher, and then put some other effects further down chain from that, loop 6, 7, 8, whatever. They'll come post preamp, whichever preamp you have on. And then you come out of the switcher back into the return of the runt, and you'll be able to do all that. So I would say an 8-loop switcher is a good thing to look for. Maybe something from RJM, or I use Musicom Lab. With a setup like this, because you've already got a rack pre, I'm just kind of envisioning it being more like, I use a floorboard switcher with my stuff, but that'd be kind of it'd be a little convoluted to use that. So I would suggest using Musicom Lab, because that's what I use, but they're more floorboard based switchers. I would probably suggest for your situation using a rack 8-loop switcher, something along the lines of an RJM. And maybe if you want any pedals or effects, put them in a rack as well, since you've already got a rack preamp, and then just have a MIDI pedal on the floor to switch it all. Use a ground controller, an RJM MIDI controller, something like that. I used to use a rig like that, by the way. I did a kind of a similar, like with a RJM switcher, and I used to use the PT100s, and I would switch a Egnator M4 preamp out for, I'd either use that as my preamp, or I'd use the PT100 head preamp, and I was using RJM to do it. So this is going back 15 years, but I used to have a rig like that. Yeah. Anyway, talk to Dave about it. He would be your man for helping figure that out. Mr. Friedman. I know it was a while ago, but do you remember any particular exercises you relied on in your woodshed days? I mean, I still kind of do some of the same stuff to this day. I found things that work to warm up, and a lot of Steve Morse stuff that I've sort of shown before, but he would always have these very musical sort of exercises. Even if you take the song like from his RH, what was the video that he did? I can't remember. It's called, but it's Power Lines, I think, was his instructional video. Was it an REH video? REH, Power Lines, I think. And there's a ton of stuff in there that's super musical. He even teaches how to play the crazy piece Too Many Notes. That's like a off of his, I think it's called High Tension Wires record. This is going way back. So, but anyway, that piece is just a beast to play through, or arpeggiating through, single. He's not a sweep picker, so it's everything's alternate picking, and going through these arpeggios shapes, and then some single note stuff that's just like, work through that stuff, and if you can get it anywhere close up to speed, it's gonna make your technique go crazy. But also, he used to do some other things, and he had an article, a column, is the correct term, in Guitar Player magazine for many years, and he would post these awesome things every month, warm-ups and little pieces and sort of etudes and things that I still play to this day, that if I can play through them, because they're quite complex, and if I can play through those, then I can it helps my hands to get synced up, because I find when I'm warming up and stuff, and just I need to get my hands, like the guitar feels a little unfamiliar every day when I start, and then I get my hands synced up, and then it's like, oh yeah, like we're, there's the 5th string, and my hands on the 5th string over here at this time, the pick and the getting everything locked in is my process of warming up every day, getting my fingers going and stuff. That said, I mean, recently with playing with Satch Band, I had some pieces that were complex that I would work on every day that were in the show. So Steve Vai things and stuff that or even just playing through the arpeggios of Always With Me, Always With You, every day to get my hands warmed up and stretching, because there's some 5 and 6 fret spreads there, so doing those things would help me to warm up and get around the neck and get my hands going and stretched, and I never push it too hard, but just kind of getting the getting the blood flowing and all that, and yeah. So, do you ever get charged oversized bag fees to check your guitar in the Gator Mini Vault? Um, Not so far, but I've only used it a little bit. So never the I series. Now, part of oversized bag, no. There's generally not oversized bag fees. There's more like overweight, or it's not like a size thing, because it's more like a weight or too many bags. So like when I flew out here, I checked. How many bags did I check? I checked 2. Yeah, just no, is that right? I have a suitcase out here right now and a guitar. I think I got charged an excess bag fee because I didn't have any juice on the airline I flew out on. If I'm not, no, that's not true. What the hell did I do coming out here? I'm confused, trying to remember. I thought I got charged an excess bag fee on this run, but that doesn't make sense now that I'm thinking about it, because I've got status on American, and I don't know why I would have. But anyways, if you've got status on an airline, it really helps to not get, you can get a little more weight generally, and you get a little more, an extra bag generally. You can check 2 for free, so that's helpful. I've only got status on American right now, but anyway. But you never really get an oversized bag fee unless it's really big, like maybe a Gator case. Maybe it would be an issue. But I the only time I've actually flown the double guitar, like the Enki style or Gator style, was on JSX to Vegas out of LAX, and that's a wacky airline that doesn't really, it's a small airline that's almost like flying sort of private. So I still haven't tried to fly one of those Gators. That'll happen soon. We'll see what happens. When I show up with one of those, it should be fine, I hope. It's always just money, and then you end up billing it to the gig, because it's everything's solvable with money. In Europe, though, sometimes I think it can be an issue. Like they'll be like, "No, you just can't bring it," and it's like, "Really? I can't even pay?" And they're like, "No." They're a little more on it with weight over there and stuff. 23 kilograms a bag and all that. All right. Moving through the chat here. I have not turned on my 1972 50-watt Marshall, says Braxall, since I got the Friedman Jose. Yeah, I mean, I get that, because that's the whole point of the Jose, was to be able to get a great sound at a lower, to make it sound like the cranked amp at a lower volume. And the Marshalls are just more unruly. They're great. I mean, it's awesome and it's fun. But like, if you don't have an attenuator, or you don't want to deal with, cooking tubes and stuff like that, because you're running it hard, just can't deal with the volume all the time and stuff. It's like, why bother, right? Go for the easier thing. And that's kind of why everybody ended up going to master volumes and more gain in the preamp and all that. More guitars with a super chat. I love the vids from your gigs. For my gigging strat, I replaced the bridge single coil with a SC size humbucker by Seymour Duncan. Should I then change the bridge tone pot to 500K? It's a great question. It's a really good question. It's probably a little on the warm side with the 250K, but I don't really know. Like, I've never bought one of those little 59s or little JBs, which is probably what you have, or a little Screaming Demon. And that's a great question for maybe the folks at Duncan, or am I supposed to switch out the, and at the end of the day, it ends up being whatever sounds good. I would probably give it a try. I think those pickups, no matter what, are not going to sound, it's got to be brighter than a humbucker, and still more single coil-ish, just because of the spacing of where it is under the strings and stuff, and the bridge position. It's not as far left if we're looking down at the guitar, or right if you're a lefty, under the strings towards the neck, But so it's whatever sounds good. Give it a try and see what you think. I would suggest, setting up a great tone that sounds really good, switching between the neck pickup, the middle, and the bridge, and listen to what you've got and record it, and then maybe do the swap and leave all the amp settings or whatever, maybe even use a plug-in to do it or something, so the settings are exactly the same, and then play the same stuff again and listen again, and see what you think. Because it can be, the time between when you're changing out something like a pot and plugging back in, and then where you're sitting, all that stuff can change. So I like to record things like that. That's my one little tip when I'm trying to do A/B comparisons, decide if I like something more or less when it comes to getting a soldering iron out and switching things, be it in amps or guitars or whatever. I like to record and then listen back. I'll still go reference that video I did with Dave Friedman about the Van Halen pickup thing. Go listen. Let me go back and listen to those pickups, because it's a good reference of listening with the same amp settings and everything. You can go back, and it's always there. You can go back and reference it and listen to the tones, and maybe I'll give that pickup a try. That kind of thing. So that's what I'd suggest. There's no right or wrong. I mean, a lot of Gibsons shipped with 300K pots, right? Not that different than a 250. So it's definitely gonna sound a little darker though with the 250 than it would with the 500. So maybe that's the question. Just, does your guitar sound too dark? Does it seem like you wished it had a little bit more openness for the humbucker? Or if it sounds fine, then just leave it alone. A lot of times I leave things alone these days. I mean, I've got that SG that I play with Classic Rock Show. I've never switched a thing on that guitar. I'm sure it's got the 300K Gibson pots that I'd probably like the guitar, maybe even more with 500. But you know what? It works. And it's like my SG that just kind of works. So I just use it. Someday I want an old SG still. Like I'd love a 64, 63, 64. Have you checked out the Doug Aldrich Blackstar DA100? I have not. Like I've seen Doug's playing it, but I haven't personally plugged into one and tried it. So Doug's great though. He's awesome. Drew says, I'm a big fan of your playing in demos. Thanks, man. I just got a 35 watt Mark V combo. What would be the purpose of using the effects loop? Well, effects loop is to put effects post preamp, so that things like delay and reverb that get mucked up when they're going into the front of a dirty amp, the dirty amp tone, they'll sound cleaner and more defined and controllable in the effect loop. So effects loops is generally for stuff like that, time-based delay, reverb, things like that. Sometimes modulation effects like chorusing and stuff, it can sound cleaner. But once again, important to note, as always, there is no hard and fast rule. You might like the sound of a delay in front more or reverb in front more, depending on how much distortion you're using and stuff. It can sound wilder and sloppier and just more out of control into the front, which some people might like. So it just depends what you're doing. Sometimes I like the tone of chorus and flange and stuff, just like Eddie Van Halen would, in front of a dirty amp. Even though it's technically a time-based effect, but can sound a little more just juicy or something, or pronounced or something. And then in the loop, it's always a little more controlled, a little more pristine. So that's it. Stuff to not run in the loop, generally speaking. I mean, once again, there are no hard and fast rules, but I don't put overdrives or anything like that, or fuzzes. That's going to not work so well in the loop. Sometimes a compressor in a loop can work good. It's kind of more studio style, rack style, old school, like certain compressors, EQ in a loop can work good. EQ in a loop can work good to shape the tone of an amplifier that you find, like, that you really want to carve, EQ in front is more to shape the tone of your guitar going into the amplifier. So if you've got a guitar that you feel like, oh, this pickup's too bassy, or I wish the neck pickup had more clarity or something, you can do that. If you feel like your amp tone, though, you want it more like scoop metal or something like that, that's for the EQ in the loop. You put an EQ in the loop and you can get like really radical and kind of, change it. Like you could turn a Marshall into something that sounds more like a boogie, or vice versa, whatever, like you can just do more radical carving and stuff and really alter the tone of the amplifier with an EQ in the loop. Yeah, kind of cool. So you were right. It's slightly dark. Yeah, if it's slightly dark, try a 500K. If you're like, yeah, because it's not like a night and day, like, the 250 to 500 thing. I mean, it depends on the person, but I think if you put a 500 in there, you'll be like, oh, there it is, There's that clarity I was missing. Yep. Mr. Guitar says, the glasses look great. Had to go with the glasses today. For those just joining, I had a little contact lens incident earlier, so I won't be able to put those in until 5 p.m. today or something. So you're getting my new glasses that I'm actually really happy with. I was telling the story earlier how the lenses are thinner than any that I've actually ever been able to have before, even though they look thick to most people out there, probably. I'm sure they're a big improvement upon what I had even last year. Dude, are you sick? You look like JJ French. No, I just got off the bus. This is I woke up and I can't get into my hotel room and I had to do Sunday Live look. So rolled out of the bunk. Last night on the bus, man, I have spent, it's probably something like, I don't know. I mean, maybe 110 or 115 nights of this year so far, rolling on a bus, sleeping. It was a lot of nights on a bus this year. So last night was the last bus ride for this year until January. So I'm just going to cherish that. I like sleeping on a bus, generally speaking, but get over, 100 nights rolling on a bus, and it's maybe time to, be in a stationary bed that's not like this all night rolling around. It's got to do something to your internal organs. I don't know. Your performance at Satchvi Istanbul concert was outstanding. Thanks. I appreciate that. I'm trying to remember. I think I felt like pretty good about it overall, that particular one. I think I had like a couple things I wish I'd played differently early in the set, as that's my memory of the Istanbul show. That it wasn't my best night overall, but I did my best. It was fun though, and I had a nice dinner up on the roof of. I decided to splurge and go for a nice dinner. So beside the venue there's like, right, you'll know if Irvin. There's a Ritz Carlton there, and it's got a Nobu on top, sushi restaurant. And I went there and I sat up there on the day before. It was beautiful outside, gorgeous night, and I splurged on some. I had sushi. I think it might have been the only time I ate sushi the whole or maybe one other time. I love sushi, so it's like, I've been gone at least a month and a half without any, and I thought tonight, sushi. Yeah, and then we played the show the next night at the venue there, outdoor gig in Istanbul, and had a good time. Made some friends with some stray cats because there's lots of those in Istanbul. Good times, good times. What else we got here? What else we got here? Looks like Ben's doing a little moderation. Thanks, Ben. How are you, man? What's going on? Could you remove the reverb tank and use the reverb circuit as an effect loop? That's a great question. I've never heard of anybody trying to do that. I wonder, like in a Fender Deluxe Reverb or something. A really good question. I have no clue. That's definitely a Friedman or amp expert. I mean, maybe it gives you the, because you've always got the in and out there for the tank, but I don't know if it would be. There's probably buffering and issues with, like, could it be converted into an effect loop? Really good question. I have no clue. I don't even know where it really works. It comes somewhere in the preamp circuit of a Fender amp, generally speaking. So probably really amp dependent too. Yeah. Braxall said, at least your power bill's not big at home. That's true. My power bill's never big anyway. I'm a pretty low footprint kind of guy when it comes to, like, I don't, I don't use a ton of AC and stuff except when it's super hot in the summer, and I got a small place, to be honest. So it's like I don't really, I'm not the guy with the swimming pool and the 5-room house or anything like that, using lots of power. But yeah, it's definitely low when I'm not around with no lights on and nothing going on. Congratulations for your great rhythm section in Satchvi. Thanks, super fun. I could recognize it in Milan. What about the life in a Euro tour bus? Is there enough space for band and crew? How does cooking and cleaning work? All great questions. So a Euro tour bus is generally configured so that the sleeping happens upstairs. There's actually it's a double-decker bus. which makes the whole thing kind of, generally, if you're anywhere over 5'9", you're just always ducking down a little bit to get under the doorways and stuff, because the bus can only be so tall for going underneath overpasses and stuff like that. So, but that's generally, yeah, there's a stairwell kind of 3/4 of the way towards the back of the bus on just about every Eurobus I've been on. You go up there, and then there's a series of bunks configured down a hallway. Sometimes there's a front lounge and a back lounge, usually, but sometimes those areas, the lounges, so by lounge I mean couches, and you can sit in there with some windows and usually a TV, and everybody can watch movies and stuff. There's usually one at the front and at the back of the upper deck of a Eurobus. And you can also configure those areas to have more bunks if you need to. So the and sometimes a bus company will configure a bus for you just for a tour, deck it out, or sometimes it's already set up a certain way. It just works. So that's how a Eurobus is generally. Now bunks can be configured in a few different ways on buses. Sometimes there's 3, so it's like stacked 3, and then so it'll be 3 and 3 and 3 and 3. Sometimes it's 2, and then you've got more room in there for above your head. So sometimes there's right on top of you, there's a thing right here because there's somebody sleeping right above you. Or sometimes it's more like you've got a foot and a half or something there of space more. Yeah, and there's usually a door on either end of the hallway where the bunk area is, so that you can close those and separate from the lounges and stuff, and the stairs area that goes down to the bottom. And kind of keep it a little quieter in the bunk area. It's kind of like the unspoken rule is shut up in the bunk area day and night. Don't make a lot of noise, because there could be somebody in there taking a nap even during the day. There's a kitchen bathroom that you can't poop in. You can only pee in down on the lower level. It's generally like a long, maybe bench sort of couch thing, and then like a couple seats and a table area, in the kitchen. Generally a microwave and a nice freezer sometimes. And there's not a hell of a lot of cooking that goes on, but generally, people are making sandwiches or that kind of thing. You generally got cold cuts and stuff like that in the fridge, and you can make a sandwich. Peanut butter jelly. I end up doing a lot of you can buy prepared. When I'm on tour in England, on the bus there, we're always going to Marks and Spencer, which is like a nice department store that has usually a grocery store in it as well. And go in there and get a lot of prepared meals and things that you can keep in the fridge, and then heat up on the bus. So that's kind of the life like that. Cleaning, it's interesting. Bus drivers in Europe generally do the cleaning, and they tend to go through and even fold your you got a comforter in your bunk and the pillow. The bus driver generally in Europe, I found, goes through every day at some point and cleans up he'll make everybody's bed, basically your bunk area, fold the comforter and fluff up the pillow, and so when you come back at night, it's all done for you. And the bus driver generally will also clean the bus and kind of keep things like clean the kitchen, clean the bathroom area. So it's always nice. And then they tend to take a lot of pride, I find, in Europe in the bus. Sometimes bus drivers own their bus. So like our driver, Tim, that does Classic Rock Show, he always owns his own bus, which is a big investment. I mean, it's an expensive bit of kit, right? A bus. And so he takes a lot of pride in it. It's always clean. He's always washing it. He's always keeping it ship shape, super nice. And washing a bus is a big, that takes hours. I mean, getting out there and he's got, a whole bunch of tools and things with the big squeegees and stuff, so he can get all the way up to the top windows and, go all the way around the bus. And yeah, so there's just kind of a lot of pride in the buses. Now in the States, it's a little different, I find. I mean, it's totally driver dependent, but a lot of times the driver's hired and they just work for the company that's, Euro buses are owned by companies too. There's the Beat the Street buses and stuff, but sometimes drivers own their buses individually. And I just find there's generally a bit more involvement and care in Europe in the buses. In America, it's a little more like you're a little more on your own, like in Europe, once a week, the sheets all get done and cleaned and the laundry gets done. This particular tour I'm on right now, that didn't happen. So, just kind of like bus is a little grungier, you know, and you're a little more on your own, like kind of cleaning things up and stuff like that, being an adult. So, yeah, that's that. Long dissertation about buses. So, have you got any tips for me? Which speaker would sound good with my Vox AC15 hand wired? I'm a fan in a Vox of an Alico, you know, so I prefer anything close to the original sort of silver Alnico or blue. You know, a good Alnico speaker is I think that's part of that sound. So you've got an M75 PVC. That's sort of like an upgraded greenback, nice speaker. You're saying it's not perfect with distortion. That amp, you know, when they get dirty, they've got a certain character, like a Vox style amp. That sometimes when they're really distorted, it might not be to your liking just because it ain't a Marshall or whatever. It's a different amp. Some things about it that are like a Marshall, but yeah, you know what I'm saying? It's just like, you know, an M75 PVC is a pretty nice sounding warm greenback to me. You know, an Alnico probably going to be brighter, depending. You can always adjust with the cut control and all that, but just the tone of the speaker. But they've got a certain compression character and just a bounce to them or something, like the feel and the bounce that sounds right to me with a Vox style amp. So, or Vox style amp, you know. So yeah, you know, it's if you really want the sound, you find a nice Alnico. There's different ones made by different companies, you know. Celestion, obviously, you can get the blue or the Alnico Gold, the Alnico Cream, which is a 90-watt speaker, really nice sounding speaker. You know, if you want it Alnico but warmer, you kind of, I think you go with the Alnico Cream, because to me, generally speaking, the higher the wattage you go, the warmer the speakers tend to get. You know, you might notice that about a Celestion Redback. They're cool, but they're warm. You know, it just doesn't quite have it's a darker sounding speaker to me than say something like a Greenback. So more power, they tend to get warmer. This might not be a hard and fast rule, but generally speaking, I've found that lower power speakers, smaller magnets, they tend to be a little brighter. You know, just what I've found. Like, in other words, if you've got a greenback, like if you've got a M75 PVC and it's a 25 watt version, if you did the 65 watt, it's going to get warmer. That's what I found, and certainly the 100 watt even warmer. So if you're hearing a harsh thing, you could even just try an M75, but a higher power handling, and I bet you'd find it was a little darker and a little smoother. If that's what I'm only guessing that's what you're hearing, not perfect. You know, maybe you're hearing a little bit of, not fizz, but, you know, riz, something on the top end, whatever you want to call it. Did you try those third power amps? I played through Joe's rig a little bit. Yeah, he had me play his guitar. I love Joe. I put on his guitar and I played a little bit of stuff, and I was warmed up at that point and stuff. And he goes, "You should consider doing this for a living." He's funny. I love Joe. That was his way of complimenting. Nice guy. But it sounded really good when I was playing through it, and he plays nice and loud, and the amps were cool. I've played third power back in 15 years ago. I remember when they came out with that. Remember the British Dream, I think it was called. It was like one channel was like an AC15, and the other one was like a super lead. I remember playing that amp, thinking it sounded really good back in the day. Did you ever try Randall solid state amps way back in the 80s, like the RG80? The old they're kind of cool, like the Def Leppard amp, right? They used them on tour for a while and stuff. Kind of want one, actually. Like, there's weird pieces of gear from my youth that I would like to have. I didn't ever own one, but I knew somebody with one, and I tried it at band practices and stuff. And they've got a cool thing, they had a cool, aggressive, raspy, rock distorted tone. You know, that 2-channel RG80 thing. I've tried my 250 ml Galleon Kruger experiment, and I've got one that sucks. The guy never should have sold it because he sold it to me and it's basically broken. So I need to get that amp fixed one of these days. But that was one of those solid state, little endeavors journeys that I went on to relive my youth. Another one was a lab series, which I have, an L5, like I think that's what's called, the L5, the Ty Tabor amp. I have a combo version of one of those that I bought and promptly tried once and then put away and haven't used it since, but I should, kind of fun. Kind of fun. Time's at 12:45. I'm going to hang for about another, I don't know, I'll hang for another 25, 30 minutes or something. Let's do another half hour here and then I'll go. I'm not going to do a super long one today, but maybe an hour and 15 or something. And then I'll jet. And then the next week, I'll be home. I'll be in the studio again. It's kind of cool. Back in the old space. Pete, I have a Sir Classic Antique with HSS. Looking at changing the humbucker. Notice at some gigs it's a little noisy. Hotter, darker, potted. It's potted. Potted more is going to be like feedback, like squeal. Buzz is not, potting doesn't do anything to help that. Looking for something hotter, darker, potted. I mean, I use the SSH Plus in my PT Custom, the Sparkle one, and it's a great sort of JB darker style pickup. And what I would suggest you do is get one of those, because any problem with buzz you're having a gig isn't related to the guitar is shielded, and you're probably going to find it with any humbucker. You're not going to get a hell of a lot quieter or anything like that. I mean, an SSV is a balanced coil pickup. You're not really going to, you want to get quieter, you got to go for something with the two pole pieces the same, like a super distortion. Part of the thing about a super distortion is the metal in both. The metal in both coils is exactly the same. It's the same number of winds, same type of pole pieces on either side. You did say darker too, right? You could go a DSV, double screw, or DSH. You want to go darkest and least noise. I haven't personally tried this, but I do know that a humbucker, part of the thing about the bucking the hum is the closer you can get to both coils being exactly the same, if that's what your biggest concern, the less hum you're going to get. So a DSH, sir, would be a double screw hot, double screw pole pieces, darker because of the double screws, no slug coil, and a hotter pickup. So you could try that. Try a DSH. Or if you want to go a little bit more like a JB sort of variant, the SSH Plus or SSH. Try one of those and see what you think. Yeah. Potting, though, I mean, the Sir pickups are all potted. So unless you're talking about squeal, if your biggest concern is just buzz, I don't think you're going to find a big difference if you use the Duncan or use the, it'd be the same. Here's a couple super chats, folks. Son of Pyro, IRX into interface is thin and tinny. Just 1 second. I got the door here. I'll grab that. Hello.
Never mind. I forgot you're doing your live stream.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, it's all good. I'll just be another 15 or something. Oh, it's okay. Yeah. That was John Andrazik from Five for Fighting, my boss. And I had the door locked. Hope he's not mad at me. He didn't sound mad. John's the nicest guy in the world. IRX into interface is thin, tinny, clipping almost. You get something going on with cables. It worked before. Doubt it's the IRX. Correct cables in and out jacks. No single clipping. Without seeing the setup, any general thoughts? IRX into well, first of all, try the IRX into something else and make sure that the pedal sounds fine, like just with headphones or into a, I don't know, just go right into a mixer and powered monitor or something like that, and make sure that the pedal sounds robust and good. It's really hard to diagnose. So otherwise, the cables, if you're saying you've already checked, but that would be the first thing. Then make sure everything's plugged in right. The output of an IRX, Dave designed to go into a mic pre. So I believe, he would confirm this. But if you take a output of the IRX and you go into an XLR input of a mic pre, you should have a good, because the XLR input's at meant for minus 30 or whatever the heck it is. Do that. Use it. You know what I'm saying? Like, don't go into the line input. Go into the mic input. Maybe that's the problem. Going into the microphone input should give you more, because it's going to be jacked up, level wise, because it wants to see the input of a microphone. That's the way Dave designed it. He kind of, Dave believes sort of that. I mean, there's a fairly wide range on the output control of the thing, but Dave believes that XLR outputs are meant to go into XLR inputs, mic level inputs, so that you can run things through mic pre's. Generally speaking, he likes plugging things like preamps and things into Neves or APIs, into the mic in, and he feels like it gives it a juicier kind of character. I think I'm speaking for him here, but we've talked about this before. I know he designed the output of the IRX, the XLR out of the IRX. It's got an XLR out, right? I believe so. And it's supposed to be, let me just double check here so that I'm not talking out my butt, because I don't trust myself these days with such things. Friedman IRX. I'm going to look at the images. Balanced out. It doesn't have an XLR out on it, does it? It's got 1/4 inch outs. Okay, let me just take a look here. Balanced out. So it's all 1/4 inch. And the balanced out is going to be the one with the speaker sim, and that's the one that you're going to use. And I'm pretty darn sure that it's meant, that you can check the manual, but I think that output is meant to be plugged into like take a 1/4 inch to XLR and go into the microphone input of your preamp. Let me take a look at the manual really quick and see if I can just take a look here. There's actually even like there's diagrams here that show it being plugged into. There's the manual, Friedman IRX. Yeah, I'm looking at the manual here. Just gonna go to it. Sorry, guys. I don't know, you got me wondering about this now, so I'm into it. But here's a picture of external preamp. PA system. DAW. Well, anyways, I've probably taken enough time on this, but I would recommend trying to take the balanced output into, and you can call him and ask him about this too, or send him a message. But I would recommend trying to take the balanced output into a mic level input, because I think that's what, long story short, what he's designed it to do. And you're going to want to use a TRS 1/4 inch male to male XLR on the other end, right? Male XLR to go into the microphone input. I believe that's right. And that should be correct. Yeah. Yep. But you're saying it worked before too, so that leads me to believe this could be something else wrong. New music or record from you. Seen Set 5 with you. Enjoyed the concert. You sounded great. Thanks, Marco. Appreciate that. Yeah, I'd love to. And it's certainly time, and it's just a question of when. So I just don't have time at the moment to actually get any new, like, a record done, because it's the touring right now, back to back is bonkers. So the best I can do is maybe start to assemble some ideas to put together for when I do have, at least a month or two or something like that to put a record together. 240 folks online. Nice to have you all here. What decibel levels would you record at? Like I said, I'm recording a live album in my studio apartment. Well, you really have to work, Joe, within your limitations of the space that you're working in. You might have to record silently. There's enough tools these days where you can make a record, if all you had to monitor on was headphones. So and silently, so it's just working. There's no hard or fast rule. If I was recording amps, if I'm like, I want tube amps, I'm going to do it, and I want it, but I'd probably, if I had volume limitations, I did this on Pete Thorn too. I mean, I recorded a lot of the parts through either a Shure reactive load or an aux, in my apartment that I lived in Studio City at the time. It was an apartment building where I lived, on the third floor of a 4-story building, in between people above me, people below me. A lot of the solos and different stuff on that record was cut in that apartment. And, I worked with load boxes because that's how I could do it, So people do things in different ways these days. Joe Satriani records a lot, just direct, and then uses plugins these days for things, to vary things. He always kind of did that. I mean, even in Surfing with the Alien, he was recording a lot of things kind of with, I don't know if it was load boxes, but speaker simulation and things like that going direct, way back in the day. So it's whatever gets the job done. Does the Boss Dimension C work in a similar way to the Eventide micro pitch when used in the EVH style settings? I've often wondered that myself. Like, is a Dimension C, it's supposed to be kind of a chorus, but is it more a pitch effect? And the answer is I'm not really sure. It's got its own distinct, obviously just the preset settings, but I don't think it's technically like chorus. I think it is more like a fixed pitch kind of thing, but I could be wrong about that. There was the Dimension C and Dimension D. Did you know that even Stevie Ray Vaughan used one in the studio? It's part of the Texas Flood sound. A little bit of Dimension, I think it's Dimension D because I think it was the rack mount version, but a little bit of that mixed in was part of the Texas Flood sound. Anyways, kind of interesting. Because that's that more subtle, like a still modulation kind of thing, where you just blend it in a little bit and the sound just gets wider and bigger. And it's not like, oh, it's chorus, like you heard it with a chorus pedal or something back in the day. Kind of interesting. More Guitar says, JB is very sweet in the bridge, although very hot. Pete's Thornbucker Plus is definitely PAF. Yeah, Thornbucker Plus is, he's answering John. Thornbucker Plus is a 9. It's a hot PAF, more akin to like the, that Duncan EVH sort of vibe, but with our wind. Different, it's got its our own wind. A JB is more of a mid-bomb, darker. You really hear the difference when you play them clean beside one another. Going into distortion, the JB's darker, mid, and then the Thornbucker sound a little more open. You go into clean, it'll sound much more apparent, like how much actually, like the one pickup's quite a bit louder and dark, closed down on the top end, pushing into the mid more. That's a JB or a something like a Sir SSH plus, darker, more mid. It can feel great with gain, but it does paint you into a corner a little more, and it is not as sparkly and open for sure. Yeah. Okay. What else we got here? Let's see. There's a super chat I got to get to there. Jerry Cantrell used to have Randalls in the club days. Did he? That's interesting. I didn't know he'd used them. Yeah, they're cool. I mean, that Randall is, obviously, also Dimebag Darrell, of course, used it. But I remember Def Leppard using them. And I think George Lynch even experimented with them back in the day. I remember that. It was kind of the thing. It was like, oh, there's this sort of cheap solid state amp that people are talking about, and the Def Leppard on the Hysteria, because I think Hysteria was kind of it was all Rockman, on the record supposedly. Like, it was just about all the guitars I think are Rockman on Hysteria. So it's got that certain solid state, fast, in your face thing. And maybe they just felt like Randalls, because I seem to remember they used the Randalls on tour, back when people were still, they wouldn't have gone direct with something like a Rockman. They would have, in in-ears, that wasn't a thing or whatever. It was amps. So, okay, what's the closest thing to that Rockman sound, but in an amp through a cabinet? Yeah, probably the Randall kind of, that the solid state kind of makes sense when you think about it. I'd love to talk to, Phil Collin or something and ask him about that. Like, was that kind of the thinking? But Marshall Lead 100 MOSFET is a solid state sleeper. My first real amp was kind of that. I mean, I had a little Ibanez 50 watt, cheap kind of student combo, loud enough to gig with a band, or, but it was not great. But I got a around probably 85, something like that, Lead 100 MOSFET with the 410 cabinet in Edmonton, Canada. My mom got me that for Christmas. What a great mom I had, man. I remember it. That was so magical. My little Marshall. Oh, makes me all sentimental. Ron there with the super chat. Thanks, man. Appreciate that. No question or nothing, just a super chatty. So what makes a pickup darker or brighter? Well, a lot of things, but in reference to what I was just talking about, like certainly the strength of the pickup. If it's weaker, they tend to be brighter. You wind it hotter, it tends to get darker. This is just a very general statement, but that's generally what happens. If you take a humbucker and it's a 7 point whatever K, regardless of the magnet and everything, if it's like a low wind, a T-top or something like that, it's going to be brighter and spankier. The magnet will matter. If it's A5, it'll be brighter than if it's A2, but also just the wind, the strength of the wind. The hotter and hotter and hotter you go, it starts closing down the top end of the pickup. It's just sort of, the science of it. And what happens is you get this little resonant peak too that happens right as the high end is falling off. And that resonant peak, where that exists, can tend to make the pickup feel more like it's pushing, like in a mid-range way, I think. So, hotter, it's just it just kind of has this little kick in the mids. So yeah, it just depends what you want. But also there's other things, like I know for whatever reason, the slug coil on a, like I was mentioning earlier, the DSV dual screw coil sort of pickups are a little darker than if you've got a slug coil and a screw coil. I don't know why that is, but it just is. So, and Alan Holdsworth, actually, if you remember, he had a model of Seymour Duncan. I believe it was a two rows of screws, no slug coil. You like that warmer, smoother thing. Paul says Cobain used Randalls as well on Bleach. That's interesting. I didn't know that. Yeah. Have you tried amplifying Nation amps? I have not. Milt, thanks for the super chat. Appreciate that. Oh yeah, that's a good point there, Dan, with the IRX. The issues that somebody was having earlier is the IR turned on. That could be that you switch the IRs off and it just sounds ratty. Sounds broken. Very good point. I hadn't thought of that. Yeah. What's we got here? Trying the IRX into something else. Great idea. I should have thought of that. Thanks. Yeah, just to eliminate your interface cable, whatever, just take a guitar cable and take the output of it, and plug it into something. But also using plug into the API XLR in and see what happens there, Son of Pyro. See what happens. And make sure the IRs are switched on. You might have switched them off. Can you talk about your upcoming Japan tour? I'm going to wait on that, actually. So just for a couple reasons, but just for, and then I'll give a little more info maybe in a week. either 1 week or 2 weeks, and then all will be revealed. All will be revealed. Yeah. What else we got here? What I've lost on I'm not sure. You guys are talking amongst yourselves there. How do you prefer to come up with compositions and songs? I don't have any set way, really. I mean, I just sit down and pick up a guitar and see what comes out, and then sometimes I'll think of a melody like right away, or it generally kind of starts with a guitar part or riff or something, one thing leading to the next, or maybe a rhythm, and then I'll hear a certain groove, and then I'll hear a change over top of it, and then write a melody on top. I haven't been doing enough writing, to be honest. I mean, because I've just been out touring, and so I tend to not really write on the road. It's not something that I do. I like to write with all the tools there, like my studio and the sounds, and have everything like so that you got all your it's like an artist with all your paintbrushes and everything like that, and it's all there, and it's kind of then you just play, and have fun. I don't mean like play guitar. I mean play like a kid, with all your toys, and just see what comes out. It's just like, oh, this happens. What's happening? You can kind of do that on the road, but there's something that happens even on a day off on the road, or I don't get inspired to play guitar that much in hotel rooms, or it's just kind of, it's slightly depressing to me. Like, I like to get out of hotel rooms, generally speaking. I don't like to sit there and in a city that's, when there's stuff going on, I want to go out and do things and stuff. So I tend to not, on the road, I just don't sit there and work for hours on pieces of music. It's just not something I've ever enjoyed. But when I get home and get into my studio, I can work for 12 hours when I've got all my stuff there. It's inspiring for me. I guess I'm just a creature of habit of being in my habitual zone or whatever. So I guess that's important to me more than anything is, yeah. Dan Huff recently said he used 2 chorus at once, standard 10 and chorus mixed with a Dimension C. Yeah, I've heard of people doing stuff like that. I came up with a part of my clinic that I was doing that I'd love to do more of if I had time, called Inspired by the Tone. One of the pieces of music in there has that going on, where I'm using pitch and chorus at the same time. So it's just super modulated and super LA sounding in 1988 or whatever. It's kind of fun to use all that chorus for sure. Yeah. Do people in the chat have a preferred wah and or volume pedal? That's a good question. I'm quite happy with my silly little Dunlop that's on my main pedal board. It's a little Dunlop mini wah. I think it sounds really good. I used it on tour a little bit to play a few solos and stuff, but it is a little finicky, the little Dunlop. I mean, it by design, I mean, it has to be because it's small, but can really only work it with certain kinds of shoes. Try and wear a boot, not going to work. That's what I found, because it's so short, the heel of the boot will fall off the back of it. You can't really get it. I don't know. So anyways, but I really, really like the Petrucci wah, which has this crazy deep vocal aggressive thing. It's a great sounding wah pedal, the Dunlop Petrucci wah. It's not a typical. And the other one I really liked was the old controversial, the BBE, essentially, because it was the Axis wah, that the Vertex thing, that whole mess that happened. But great sounding wah, that BBE, and you can still get it. I think I can't remember what it's called, but it's the one based on a Clyde McCoy or whatever. That wah always sounded really great. I've got a Vox, a new one that sounds really good. The Friedman wah is really nice too. The one he has, he did a really nice job on that. What's your favorite mic pre, 1073 or something else? I like 1073s. I like APIs too. Either an API 312 or a 1073 is great. 1073s are a little fatter, a little slower, a little darker. Really great. Just cool. And API is fast, punchy, in your face. Great for electric guitar, for aggressive. So those are kind of been my standby. That's basically what I have in my studio, or variants of those. So I've got a pair of 312s and pre, and API pre, and a pair of 1073s, duplicates, basically made by BA in my studio. So that's what I've used for years. I did a bunch of soundproofing, and my neighbors are cool. I live in a house above the garage, downstairs neighbors, which I'm cool with. Oh, that's cool. Oh, so you're in a studio apartment, but you can record. Well, I mean, it's up to you. You know, if you've got a, I did a lot of my first record with a cabinet stuffed in a closet. You know, like the Guitar Nerd record, excuse me, was done with a little Bogner 112 cube in a closet, mic'd up, with surrounded by soft absorptive blankets, you know, so totally dead. But I did a lot of the you know, Revenge of the Nerd and all those tunes were recorded like that and it was a Bogner cube with a G12H 55 hertz, like the Hendrix G12H, you know, the kind of the Heritage series, I think it was Celestion. That's what I had in there at the time, you know, was that speaker. It was before I really got into screwing around with a lot of different, you know, what do I really like for speakers and scumbacks and different greenbacks and all that stuff, and buying vintage speakers and stuff. So I just used what I had. Yeah. What's your take on the Vimram Butter Machine Landau distortion? It's cool. It's got kind of this almost like a fuzz thing going on mixed with a distortion. I tried it in Japan, and I thought it was cool. I tried it at the Vimram factory. I thought it was a neat pedal for sure. But it's not like a Friedman BEOD or something. You know, it's got more of this. It's a little more vintagey, gnarly sounding. You know, you could definitely. There's probably more potential there to make it sound bad. You know what I mean? Like for certain players. But it's got a big fat, you know, big grindy. I mean, I kind of thought maybe more similar to my Starlight Fuzz from Crazy Tube Circuits or something, which can kind of sound like amp distortion too. It's not, you know, fuzz sometimes like this brutal, you know, big muff, like whatever. It's like, no, the Starlight can actually sound like an overdrive at lower levels, or a distortion, or, oh, it's becoming a fuzz as you turn the gain up. And maybe the Butter Machine has some of that going on, you know. Maybe not quite as aggressive as the Crazy Tube Circuits, but yeah. It's 1:12. I'm gonna go about another 5 minutes here, just to grab some more of the super chat there. King of Tone waiting list is now over 10. What? Really? That's crazy. I'm not 100% sure about this, but I think the Brothers AM Crazy Tubes Chase Bliss, excuse me. The Brothers AM will give you just about everything. The King of Tone will. Have you checked out that one? Brothers Analog Man, it stands for, you know. The Prince of Tone, I believe, is it's the clean side, which is my favorite side of that pedal anyway. The hotter side was not my favorite. It was the one I used the least, although some people probably like it. I don't know, you know, for their own thing. Everybody's different. But, you know, 10 years, man, that's a long time. I'm glad I have one. But, yeah, I've got one with the hot red side or whatever, and then the cleaner side. And the cleaner side was the one that always knocked me out, which is kind of like Prince or Duke of Tone, I think, you know. I don't know about stacking. I don't really know the difference. Like, is a Duke of Tone a hot red side, or is it? I thought they were both kind of the cleaner side. I'm just not really sure. Both the ones you just mentioned. So stacking them might not sound the same. I mean, maybe it would. I don't know. It's a good question. I don't know everything. I'm sorry. I just ordered the exotic wah. I used to use one of those. Mine, to be honest, it broke for some reason, and then I just never went back to it. Like the switch broke on it, and it's not saying that's going to happen to you. That happens to a lot of wahs. For some reason, I've had a run of wahs over the years that all crap out on me. So I like the standard Dunlop 595. I had a special order to make it auto return. I have the mini version. Auto return, does that mean it goes back to the same place or something? Or I don't really know what that means. But I used to use a Dunlop 535Q too. I think I had that one crap out on me. Maybe. I like the EVH wah. Yeah, I've got two EVH wahs actually. One that Ed gave me a gift. I brought him a pedal once, a phaser, and then he went in the other room and he came back with a pair of, I'm not making this up, he came back with a wah. He goes, here, I want to give you this. Like, he gave me a gift in return. It was so sweet. And a pair of Converse that were striped, but I still have. Is it striped? Van Halen Converse he gave me. This is very cool. So I still have the WA that he gave me that day, and I like the EVH WA. It's got, like you say, it's got a hell of a V sweep. Yeah, it's got its own thing going on, but I like it. I think it's cool. Okay. Well, we already did that. Sorry, that question. Which of your gigs has been the most challenging? Oh man. I mean, I've learned a lot on it. It's really hard to answer that question actually, because I learned a lot. Early on when I think about Don Henley, playing with him, and really, just not wanting to, provoke the ire of, like basically I had to get it right, and I don't know, there was just this real, like, I had a thing back then about probably like maybe an unhealthy, need for approval or something when I think back about it. But it drove me to work, like I wasn't gonna screw this up, you know what I mean, that kind of thing. So that was very difficult. I remember the gigs, being very like hard on myself about wanting to really just play everything perfectly and stuff. And so when I think back about that, sort of prepared me for later. It was like, if I can do this, I can do anything. I felt like playing with him. So that maybe was the hardest in a way, because everything after that, no matter what it was, and it was even more early on when I first auditioned for him that I felt those things, like the pressure of, like, and then I guess getting the gig eventually, like 2009. I'd done a lot of touring when I eventually sewed up the gig and did it for a number of years. I'd played with Jewel, and I'd played with Chris Cornell, and I'd played with Melissa. Sorry, not Melissa Etheridge. That came just after Dawn, and kind of happened at the same time. I was playing with both of them during the same period of time. But Cornell, and a lot of pressure, television, big gigs and stuff like that prepared me over the years for then eventually playing with Dawn. But I still felt that, that it had to be like when you got through a gig, it was always like, okay, we did it, good job, but it was like it was always working. I had fun, but it was all I was always like, like trying to be, yeah, that's my memory of it. So maybe that was the hardest. But going to Japan and doing probably the one of the other, tougher things I've ever done, and just a period in my life that was kind of difficult too, but it was the All Night Live 2015, all night concert at Fuji for 100,000 people. That was a lot of pressure. And things like the Dawn gig prepared me for that, to get me to the point where I was mentally able to, how am I going to get through this, whole night of music and all these sets of music, and just how to deal with that level of pressure, I had to do things like, I remember, like with Kyoshi, doing that gig, he's got these ideas that are really grand ideas and sometimes can be difficult to execute. But I remember, like, just give you an example. There was a small stage, 100,000 people, right? This massive outdoor show. And then there was a small stage that was about a quarter mile from the main stage, where he's out in the middle of the crowd. He literally drove out to that stage to start a set of music. We were playing this rock tune, and it's like this kind of dun 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 dun, and he went and got in his Corvette. He had an old Corvette in Japan. That's pretty cool. Black, maybe like a 63, something like that, convertible. And he got in the Corvette, and he was singing like in the passenger seat, but standing up over the windshield, driving through the crowd, with a guy driving him in his car all the way out to the small stage. And then he got out to the small stage and went up there and started an acoustic set. So he finished the song. I mean, we literally had to play as he's driving all the way through the crowd. We just vamped on this one progression, and he's talking to the crowd and singing a verse and chorus and stuff all the way out to the small stage. And he gets out there and he started an acoustic set out there. And I remember, like, he wanted to bring the neck down of his guitar at the end of this whole thing and stop the song, but I was looking, I don't see so good, and, he's like so far away, and we all had to watch, and just when he brought the neck down to, big rock move, and that was the this was the beginning of the third set, I think, at Fuji. So this all would have happened around probably like 3 a.m. or something like that. 3:30 in the morning. It's an all-night show that started at 9:30 and ended up like 6:30 a.m., 7 a.m. So yeah, that happened, and then he did this acoustic set, and I went out to play a guitar solo with him. So I wasn't in a Corvette; I drove in a golf cart, but drove all the way out to the stage. Now, I'm so far away from the stage at that point, but the PA is pretty loud, right? And there's that delay that happens from when you hit a note and then the sound comes out of the PA, which is at that point when you're that far in front of the main, it's like 300 or 400 milliseconds. I mean, you hit it, your guitar, and so you can't listen to the PA or you're screwed. You'll just get lost. So I have my in-ears in, because the only way you can play in a situation like that is with in-ears when you're that far out and there's so much delay on the PA. And I get out to the small stage, and the whole thing was he starts this song, and then I'm going to walk up onto the platform and play solo with him. I'm just going to kind of appear, walk up these steps and join him for the rest of the tune. So I would walk up. We would do this particular song sometimes in the arena shows with regular, but this was like I'm gonna not be on stage, and then I'm gonna walk up, and then I'm gonna start my part at the solo. It's gonna be kind of a thing. So I did that, but there was all these people kind of pushing me like to go on the stage ahead of, and I was like, I know when to go. And there's a bit of a lost in translation thing, Japan stuff, and so it's like people are going, you need to go, like you need to go now, and they're like pushing me, and I'm like, just leave. And meanwhile, this is very delicate. It's a ballad, this tune, and there's 100,000 people there. I've got my guitar. Remember, I had a modeler because I needed a separate rig. I couldn't be a quarter mile out with, so I had to have a modeler there set up. It was a one of those amplifier. Remember those, like the amplifier, like fire burning, little boxes that I made a sound, just one simple sound with some overdrive and compression and, a simple amp model or whatever. I had my old Strat, I remember, and probably just a cable, and I remember hoping that was going to work. And I didn't really know how loud it was going to be in the in-ears, because it was like this chaos, and I had to have the ears up really loud to get over the sound of the PA. and I'm standing down at the bottom of this it's a circular stage, in the middle of 100,000 people, and everybody, all the crowd all around and everything like that, and the stairway leading up to the, and you're like, let's just hope this works, and it's like me and my friend Lauren Gold, who plays keys in the Who, we have a saying, please work, please work. So it's that, right? And everybody's pushing me to go, like, go up the stairs, you need to go. And I'm like, leave me alone, stop pushing me, I know when to go. I'm gonna go when I'm gonna go right before, And he got to the last bar before, and I walked up the stairs and walked out and played the first lick, and I seem to remember it was quite loud in my ears, but I had him and the mix was okay. And I just, I had this great thing that I connection with him. He doesn't speak a lot of English, and I speak more now, but less than for sure Japanese. But we had this connection where just, music and the connection that it's the international language and all that. He'd just look at me, and we'd look, I'd look him in the eye, and then we'd play and smile a little bit, and everything's cool, play through the part and get through that solo and everything. And then just, I was just trying to be like this moment where it was like him and me together, just playing music, even no matter how many people were watching, and universal language stuff, even though the song's in Japanese and everything, the sentiment of the song, I was always trying to play off of his melody on this particular tune and stuff. And it's a ballad, and I do a solo at the end again, then we end together, and it's cool. And I did that, and I think about that moment of being like, like as far as hard or pressure or whatever, and it's all what you make of it. It's as hard as you make it, I guess. And you just kind of have to shut out the outside world, and everybody, you know, the crowd and everything else, and then you just make music. You just right here, you know. I remember Draco Rosa, guy that I played with and did a similar kind of connection with him. I felt like, and he kind of taught me. This is going back to 2003, 2004, touring with him, and we would do some of these moments in a show in front of a lot of people in the arena, or sometimes a massive, you know. One of the biggest crowds ever, 140,000 people in Colombia. I played with him, and I would do like this nylon string guitar piece with just him and me and vocal, you know. And I remember saying to him once, like, maybe it was that piece, the nylon string thing, and when we were rehearsing it, like I was like, how am I going to get a tempo for this? Like, how are we going to, like, yeah, I'm just going to start. Like, how are we going to start this? And he goes, what do you mean, man? He's like, it's just you and me, you know, just you and me. That's how we're going to do it. And I was like, that, I always remember that, like him saying that. It was one of those moments where it was like, yeah, dude, like, you've got the skills, you know what to do. You're going to make a little, it's going to be a moment. It's going to be, maybe it'll be a little faster, a little slower tonight. Maybe you play it a little quieter or a little different or whatever. But it's almost like there are no mistakes. Just, you know, just make music, make art, just go, just do it. You know what to do, you know? And that was he kind of taught me that, I think, Draco, like a little bit. I learned how to relax because I'm a little bit of a nervous, like uptight, you know, whatever. Like that's in my nature from when I was a kid. And I remember that moment of going, yeah, dude, like just, here was this guy that was kind of fearless, like almost fearless, just doesn't, you know, mistake. What's that? Anyway, okay. So on that note, some great questions today. Thank you guys for joining me. And that's that. Yeah. Freaking amazing. Thanks for yeah, it was just one of those, like, I mean, that's some of the question was, you know, what are some of the hardest gigs? And it's like, well, it's as hard as you make it, maybe, you know, or as easy as you make it. And it's up to you, you know. You know, like the idea of something being hard, it's like, sometimes the other thing, I'll just leave you on this note, like playing the lick perfectly. I got to practice this lick and get it ready for the big whatever gig on the weekend. And, you know, it's got to be just so or no. And a lot of times we're self-imposing that stuff, you know, like, and the internet can be brutal. Like if you get up and you do a Van Halen song, but you don't play the solo just right, everybody's like, oh, that sucked, he didn't know it, or whatever, right? You know, that stuff. But it's like a lot of the time we put this stuff on ourselves, you know, like the lick has to be this lick, or it has to be, it's like, what if I just hit one note and bent it and put my arm up in the air and shook the string, and would that be the right thing to do? It'd be easier, but it might be the thing to do instead of like stressing yourself out over, like, you know what I mean, like the most difficult you know, like it can be anything. It's art at the end of the day, so don't be too hard on yourself, and, you know, balance that with, yeah, you want to excel and play difficult things, get better and master things, and, you know, of course you do, but sometimes you're making it harder than it needs to be, you know. And it's better to just go easy on yourself. Be nice to yourself. And on that note, be nice to yourselves out there this week. Everybody have a great week. I'll be in my studio next week doing Sunday Live, so I'll see you there. Thanks for joining. Thanks for checking out my newish glasses. Everybody have an awesome week. I'm sure Ben's probably doing his live stream tonight, so thanks, Ben, for moderating and being here, and as always. And we're getting close to 400 of these, so it's almost up to 400 Sunday Lives. That's crazy. I appreciate y'all so much, and have a terrific week. And over and out from the Five for Fighting 2025 Vertical Horizon 5 for Fighting 100 Years of Everything You Want tour. Last gigs tonight, Spokane. Come on out if you want to see the show, if you happen to be in Washington State. All right, take it easy.